Hello to any of my normal viewers or any new viewers. Welcome to Dav Chat, presented by someone with the Twitter handle DavCat43, which is me. I broadcast regularly. What I'm likely to do right now is some exercise to Hamilton music. I will attempt to sing along badly, but I'll be using that energy and that excitement to get moving, try and get rid of some of the excess poundage that I associate with stress from a modern iteration of Hitler being in charge of the free world, or rather occupying the highest position in terms of the free world. And everybody's been watching the escalation of Trump sending federal troops with unmarked vans to take away protesters, even without reasonable cause, and bringing out the mums in Portland, Oregon, who have been wearing bicycle helmets, linking arms and chanting, "Feds go home, mums are here." That doesn't rhyme. That can't be the chant. But anyway, if you like Hamilton music and you want to join me in exercising, which will be followed by some more analysis of political events, such as the assassination of Judge Salas's son and her husband being in a critical condition, and what is now known about the assailant who committed suicide, or the suspected assailant, who is a lawyer specializing in anti-feminist cases, and who also worked in Moscow and worked on strengthening Russian security systems. You like the title? Fitness to cope with Trump unfitness. Yes, I'm glad you liked it. All right, so I have some weights. If you want to get some weights to join on, I'm in a position in a geographic location where I can't easily join in with the protests. I'm not in America, and I'm not in anywhere particularly useful to protest right now, but I can still contribute intellectually and financially, and in terms of motivationally. This is what I'm doing, because we need to exercise self-care in the face of fairly disconcerting and demoralizing attacks on the public by the federal government, which has been very corrupted by Trump. The stock market's going up and up and up in a kind of crazed hysteria. So Tesla's increasing in value, even though it's not reporting any particularly new or good information, because Elon Musk's fortune seemed to be tied to Donald Trump, pigeon pair corrupt liars. And I think there's a massive transfer of wealth happening across the world, in that wealthy people are really squeezing value out of the stock market prior to what seems to be a likely crash, based on reality eventually catching up with the two parallel realities at the moment. One real, we have reality, and then we have a Trump-endorsed, confected reality. So they're squeezing lots of money out of stupid people who are investing in the stock exchange, or people who are just gambling to try and catch the market before it crashes. Buy stocks, let it increase, knowing that it will probably crash sooner rather than later. Who knows how long Trump can stall that stock market crash? He keeps making political appointments to the board of the Federal Reserve, and they keep carrying out policies that are not in the best interests of the American people, but that do help to sustain the fiction for a bit longer that Trump is good at the stock market, or that Trump's influence keeps the stock market up. Yes, it does, but it's keeping it up high, making it an all the further to fall when it crashes, because the reality of the uncontrolled pandemic raging across America, the mass evictions that are going to occur when the moratorium on eviction ends, and the just the general spreading poverty that's occurring as a consequence of so many businesses going out of work, that is not a function of lockdown, that's a function of a virus that has infected many across America and has an exponential rate of transmission, which means you can't just keep quoting daily statistics. To be a responsible person, you have to look ahead and say, with that trajectory, it's getting much, much worse. And the public has been, or part of the public susceptible to manipulation, has been manipulated into opposing masks. And that's part of an astroturfed movement by wealthy people like Betsy DeVos and the Koch brothers, who helped promote protests against mask wearing, the strategy that would help contain the virus. And epidemiologists who've studied viral transmission around the world now, they've had 6 months to collect and look at data. And real world data is very significant here, because you can't do randomized controlled experiments ethically with viral transmission, because you can't say to a group, okay, you don't wear masks and let's see how you go. But Trump has made red states, in part, offer to be that group of let's not have mask compliance. And those states where the governors, or the Trump-influenced Republican governors who show their loyalty to Trump, fail the public and fail to serve the public. Oh yes, so if you are enjoying the broadcast, or if you want to join with me in exercising, feel free to share the broadcast. Late for you guys, not late for me, obviously, being half a world away. So I'm going to sing a Hamilton song that I don't really know the lyrics to very well, but the point of it is for the exercise and for sharing fitness, because I'm struggling, and I'm imagining lots of you are struggling as well. We have mirror neurons. We're human beings. We copy things that we see other people do. So I'm just putting something out there that's a relatively healthy behavior. Yeah, the Schuyler Sisters. Was it you who made the request yesterday, or at least told me that you liked that song? I've looked at the lyrics a bit. I do like it. It's quite challenging. So I'm going to have a go. The main thing is the exercise. Join in if you have the time and the space. Maybe it's too late for you guys to exercise. Well, and you can just enjoy watching me make a fool of myself and watch later during a daytime when you want to get your body moving and want to watch someone doing it in order to help prompt you or motivate you. Yes, you love that song. Okay, here we go. This is for you. There's nothing rich folks love more than going downtown and slumming it with the poor. And the carriages and squawk at the students in the comic just to watch them talk. Philip Schuyler, the man is loaded. Uh-oh, but little does he know that his daughters, Angelica, Eliza, to the city just to watch all the guys at work. Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, the Schuyler sisters. He's all right. Said not sundown. Daddy doesn't need to know. Daddy said not to go downtown. He said you're free to go. Around, look around. Revolution's happening in Rio. Angelica, work. Daddy wants to go to war in the square. Bad enough there'll be violence on our shore. In the air, round, look around. That is what we're looking for. Looking for a mind at work. Looking for a mind at work. Looking for a mind at work. In the city, someone in a rush meets someone looking pretty. Excuse me, because this isn't funny, but your perfume smells like your daddy's got money. Fancy heels, looking for an urchin who can give you ideals. Trust me, Arthur, you've discussed me. Baby, I'm a trust fund. Baby, you can trust me. Sensed by Thomas Paine. Some intense or I'm insane. Pollution, oh, what a revelation. So listen to my declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. With Jefferson, I'm gonna compel him to include women in the sequel. You have to be alive now. It's happening. The city, the world. Manhattan, and the greatest city in the world. Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, the sisters, a mind at work. There you go. That was for you, Tinkerbell. Let's do one more. How's the volume of the Hamilton music? Can you comfortably hear that? The word Green Revolution, have not your interests at heart. Bloodshed, not a solution. Don't let them lead you astray. This Congress does not speak for me, playing a dangerous game. Pray that he shows you his mercy. For shame, for shame. Words scream revolution, don't your interests at heart. Chaos and bloodshed are not a solution. Don't let them lead you astray. If Congress does not speak for me, a dangerous game. Shows you his mercy. For shame, for shame. And of course, the background is Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hamilton, providing a counter-argument during the song as a spoken word poetry style rebuttal or refutal to the argument that revolution was too dangerous. And at the moment, we're all cheering along with America because it's as if people are trying to marshal themselves for a new revolution. And that is a revolution to overturn the tyranny of a corrupt dictatorship. So instead of a monarch across the seas dictating the price of tea, you have an installed, indebted president. And he's indebted to people in America and he's indebted to people overseas. Which is why the founding fathers of America tried to write provisions in the Constitution to preclude the possibility that the president could be someone beholden to foreign interests, who would have their decision-making faculties compromised by a debt to some external politician and some external group. But with Donald Trump, we see that he is beholden to Russia for help winning the election in 2016. And that's been evident for a long time, even as people waited for the outcome of the Mueller report to see evidence of direct collusion. Mueller had already established that Donald Trump benefited from Russian help. So whether or not he cooperated in organizing and facilitating that help, he benefited from it. He is indebted to Russia. And Russia is a hostile foreign power. It is an adversarial country. The government of Russia is adversarial to the government of America and to the interests of America and the American people. Which microphone? This is not a real microphone. This is my children's toy. Thank you for appreciating that I was simultaneously doing a workout and trying to sing a song. That song was not really fit for public consumption in terms of my level of practice or familiarity with the lyrics, but you wanted it and I was happy to oblige, and I'm not that worried at this point about a lack of polish. I'm just sharing exercise, and the stress and ongoing mental torment of watching Trump and how difficult it is to dislodge a corrupt tyrant who is engaged in facilitating via depraved negligence the death of so many Americans and creating conditions for the deaths of millions of people around the world, because Trump is creating depressive economic conditions for the United States, which is the biggest economy in the world. Even California, a state of the United States, is the 5th largest economy in the world. And Trump catered to the feelings of people who have been taught by some sections of the media to only watch Fox's representation of the far left. They had the sense that the contribution of modern intellectuals was to disparage America because of the historical questioning. What is our place in the world? Can we be honest with ourselves? Can we have an honest accounting of the injustices that were in our past and whose shadows are still influencing our present? And America really needed a therapist to hold its hand during some of those intellectual changes. America needed a therapist to explain that toxic masculinity as a term doesn't mean disparage all men. It should mean be wary of people who are overly aggressive and overly posturing and hypersexualized and hyper-aggressive. Not to disparage all sexuality, just to say don't harass people in the workplace, let women do their jobs. But yes, some people felt that the baby was being thrown out with the bathwater, which is a metaphor for getting rid of too much when you're trying to get rid of something. So if you look at conservative posts on social media, which I do because I try to get my head around their arguments, women tend to say things like, toxic masculinity, they can't get me to believe in that. I love my husband. So, I embrace toxic masculinity. And someone with a higher degree of education might say, no. Toxic masculinity doesn't mean saying that masculinity is inherently toxic. Just there are some facets that have been endorsed or praised or rewarded by various societies across time that are not useful in this moment and historically have been associated with nihilism and death. So the hypermasculinity of Adolf Hitler, who was like, I'm prepared to stand up and put your interests first. That's what you want in a family, perhaps, a strong person who can defend your family. We don't need men to be exclusive breadwinners anymore. We don't need men to wield spears to fight off the opposing tribe. But there's been concerns that we were losing that ability to worship masculinity in part of a transactional exchange. We worship aggression, and in turn, we benefit from the protection. So when Trump derides African-American sports athletes who kneel during high-profile sport games and says they're disrespecting the flag, he's feeding into broader concerns in some subsets of the American population that say feminism is discounting the sacrifice of men. We had a trade. We respect and revere them, and then they sacrifice their lives to protect us. And if you mess with that transaction, then you are putting our lives at risk because you're eroding that social contract that we have with our armed forces and with our police. You have to respect authority, respect those masculine characteristics of self-sacrifice for the purpose of defense. Now, women can also be in the armed forces and have been historically, but to a lesser extent. And women are also in the police forces now as well. So it's not just masculinity that contributes to the instincts to serve and defend and sacrifice. I've got a Trump troll. Where's my troll? Oh yeah, I see it. I see it, and they're saying funny things. In the workplace, it should be unlawful for women to dress provocatively. I'm a little bit tempted to flash the screen for that, but I won't. I don't have anything that worth flashing, but I have been admiring. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it, but have you seen all the naked lady in Portland? I think they've been calling her the Athena of Portland, like a goddess of war, because it was faced with a line of heavily armed, gas-masked, weaponed, holding gas canisters, federal troops. She just had no clothes on and just walked around in the middle of a road in front of protesters. Like, you daren't advance. You dare not fire on a naked woman. Probably counting on the weirdness that they would feel about that. The fact that that would run counter to strongly conditioned social training. I mean, these federal troops have already abandoned some of their social training, like an oath to the Constitution that says people have a First Amendment right to protest. They've been told these are not real protesters. Donald Trump is right, just trying to regain order, blah, blah, blah. So yes, she She was naked. She had various yoga-looking poses, and she also sat down in another yoga pose in which she appeared to spread her legs in front of the opposing police force. I was like, wow, that degree of body confidence is something special. I will block the troll. Miss Michelle, would you like me to make you moderator? And then you will be able to block these trolls at will. That might be easier than me trying to block them at this point. Yes, but the thing is, it's also good to practice ignoring them because they exist. And we don't want to reward them or platform them too much, but it's good to practice the skill of just treating them as irrelevant. And in a big picture sense, they are irrelevant. They're superfluous to pro-social goals, like having cohesive societies or having people who work cooperatively together to protect each other and share information appropriately that protects each other. So Miss Michelle, I am adding you. Michelle, done. Okay, you are now a moderator. Oh, Tinkerballs can moderate as well. Excellent. Oh, you're not a moderator yet? Okay, let's make Tinkerbell. Thank you for your patience, everyone. It's worth it. Yes, there are mostly guidelines for business attire that rule out provocative dress, but of course, it's reasonably subjective, and a troll who makes assertions like that is probably a Peterson. What's that dude's name? Scott Peterson? No. The academic, the academic in the field of psychology who writes books like 12 Steps to Functionality, and one of them is Tidy Up Your Room. What's that dude's name? Comment moderation. My moderators. Okay, we need Tinkerballs. Nope. Oh, well, Miss Michelle, are you having any luck with moderating? Jordan Peterson, that's the one. That dude. I've seen footage of him saying that it's provocative of women to wear makeup in the workplace. And I'm sorry that your sound keeps going out. That would be frustrating. So how are we feeling about the, oh, thank you. Thank you, Vic 5Po? I don't know how to pronounce that name. You appear to have blocked the trolls. So what were we saying? How are we feeling about that assassination attempt on the judge? And some people I've seen argues that it couldn't possibly be a Russian-directed assassination because the judge herself was not assassinated. And look, by killing the judge's 20-year-old son and critically injuring her husband, that has effectively stopped the judge from being able to do her job, I would imagine. Because the level of grief you would be dealing with as a parent to lose your son to an assassination that appears to be a function of your job, that you've just done your job and you've been punished for it by having a psychopath dress up as a FedEx officer, ring your doorbell, and then shoot your husband and your son, and kill your son. That would be something that would make it more difficult to work. So no, that woman's ability to do her job as a judge, particularly on the case she was given 4 days ago of judging Deutsche Bank in a case in which investors are suing Deutsche Bank for not having appropriate procedures for investigating shady transactions to do with clients who have already been flagged as problematic, like Jeffrey Epstein, who already had a conviction for sex trafficking. So he was one of the clients of Deutsche Bank. So they had improper levels of internal vigilance relating to suspicious transactions from accounts such as Peterson's. Miss Michelle's going. Bye, Miss Michelle. Thanks for staying with me, even though it's been difficult for you via sound. I hope the sound's okay for other people. And Tinker, I will endeavor to add you first to someone I follow, because I realize that's a precursor step I need to do to make you a moderator. I don't appear to be following you yet. When I'm following you, I'll be able to add you more easily to the moderator list. And in the interim, I'm very grateful to all of the moderators. Thank you for your no, still can't find you. Judge Salas might stick with her case assignments despite the personal tragedy. Very strong woman. Yes, she might. But it's certainly one way of trying to dissuade her from continuing. So she might yet succeed. Well, my husband's already back. She might still stick with it. But it's also not the case that assassination attempts always end with the murder of their target. They can have a powerful message effect by killing people in proximity to their intended targets. So in the case of the Skripal poisonings in the United Kingdom, the targets were sick, they did not die, but neighbours and people in that community. I think there were 2 British citizens who died as a consequence of poisoning with the neural toxin of Novichok, a Russian invention. Hey, DJ, the pastor's here too. Hey, DJ. And Tinkables, doesn't matter to me that you don't scope. I do not watch anybody else's scopes, which may seem arrogant, but I'm more of a reader than a watcher. So I read things and then I share what I've read with this audience. I don't have the patience often for watching other people. And you'll probably know that if you know other people who are talkers. Some of us are not the best listeners. When I'm washing the dishes, I try and watch Morning Joe, because 40% of the American voting electorate are independent voters. And I want to know what messaging is going out to those voters. Because when the media finds it within themselves to start condemning Trump appropriately, then I feel heartened by that. No, I don't think that's true. The attorney had a case some years ago before Judge Salas. Do you know what? I don't know anything to contradict what you're saying. Both the husband was a prosecutor and the assassin was a litigator as well, so was in the legal system. So yes, I don't think I'll stick around for much longer. Is there anything else we could talk about? Kanye West, who appears to be a spoiler candidate, has said that his wife is trying to fly to Wyoming with a doctor to have him committed. He exposed her personal decision-making processes, that she was considering having an abortion when pregnant with their first child. And Kanye cried about that. He cried about it and obviously disclosed that information without having permission from his wife, because he said, I don't care if Kim divorces me, I nearly killed my daughter. And I'm okay with having an abortion debate. I frequently have little abortion debates with myself on here, in which I put arguments forth on both sides, even though personally I'm in favor of women having autonomy over their own bodies, particularly because whilst an unborn child is within your own body and your health can be jeopardized, I believe that when we honor a woman's sacrifice who chooses to forego chemotherapy in order to preserve the life of their unborn child, that we honor their choice because it is a choice. If they choose to make that sacrifice, we don't say everybody must make that sacrifice. The government must mandate that no one has the option of obtaining an abortion if their health is at risk, or nobody has the right to medical treatment if that medical treatment could jeopardize the life of their unborn child. To me, that's not okay. Yes, Kanye West was on medication for bipolar disorder. I believe he has stopped taking his medication. People suggest that he's potentially addicted to mania. Mania, I would imagine, would be quite pleasurable in some ways because you'd feel very empowered and you'd have some free association, you'd feel yourself to be very important, etc. Hey. Yes, so Kanye would presumably be in a manic state now, wanting to run for president and share his amazing epiphanies with everybody that abortion could be said to be the death of unborn children. And it is. It's the death of unborn children. So it is a weighty decision if the child is more than... It's hard to be arbitrary about this, isn't it? But brain development seems to be an important consideration because unborn babies have a degree of sentience. They are capable of learning and feeling pain probably in the 3rd trimester. So I'm not a developmental doctor, but in terms of the rights of women, I would say that even when a baby is to a degree sentient, if they haven't been born yet and their presence in a woman's body can be a factor in her death, then I say the woman has the right to fight for her own life and to make the choice of valuing her own life over the life of her unborn child. Will do. Hang on, let me save that. Because I talked to you last time, didn't I, DJ? I said I was considering writing a book of prayers for the agnostics amongst us. And there's lots of prayers we want to say right now. And the thing about prayer, when we articulate it, whether privately or out loud, it's to strengthen. It's to strengthen our resolve. And then when we share it out loud, it's to strengthen our collective resolve. So in the circumstances of a Trump presidency, there's lots of resolve that we need to put on the table. Resolve to help secure election integrity, resolve to insist that Trump not be allowed to disregard the results of the election if he loses, which he should do given the trajectory of losing support from even white, non-college educated voters. I can show you something about that. It might be a bit cheerful for you. 40%, I think, of white people still support Trump. Actually, it must be higher. Must be higher than that. All right, I'm going to... Oh, sorry, DJ, I left your email address up for too long. Trump said he'll see if he respects the election results. He said something similar in 2016. It's use of theater to cover up or to dangle and tease a despotic intention. And when we strengthen the media by encouraging them to have a bias in favor of the truth, of the very evident truth. I mean, the high rates of death amongst Americans as a consequence of Trump's depraved negligence relating to the coronavirus pandemic. That's encouraged some people in the media to be more forthcoming, to be more biased in favor of truth, and to give less credence to Trump. And before, they suffered from a very false deference. Oh, the president or a presidential candidate must be treated as if they're making truthful statements. So for balance, we have Trump statements and Hillary Clinton statements, and we offer them up to you equally for your choice. And that is not the responsibility of the media. That is underreach. Their responsibility is to evaluate truth, to make some evaluations of truth when presenting the information. And that's an important part of the pillars of democracy. And instead of saying democracy is threatened, I'm going to say peaceful society is threatened. Peaceful communities are threatened by tyranny. All right, so let's see. Are you able to see this? Yes, you are. So yes, this is a very important step, and it's a trajectory that's occurring because of death, the undeniability of death. There are lots of people who can still deny that death is occurring, and Trump has found ways to control the flow of information, to have hospitals no longer report information to the CDC, but instead have to report their death totals and their case totals to the White House, to a section of the White House, which means America won't know. America gets the Sharpied results. But people are still finding ways to report on the increase in cases and the increase in the death rate. So people who are heavily emotionally invested still in Trump are still heavily invested in Trump, but it's a diminishing subset of the population. And you can see over time that erosion continues as infection rates climb. One is functionally related to the other. So here we go. President Trump is losing support among young white working class voters. So far in his re-election campaign, Trump has stubbornly refused to expand his base, playing instead to a brand of populist conservatism that rests on solid support from white working class voters. Now, these, of course, are the actions of someone who doesn't feel compelled to expand their base because they're very committed to more of a fascist version of government rather than a democratic, legitimate government. And that's not to be surprised when you have allowed someone who cheated or who benefited from foreign help in contravention to your constitution, in contravention to the protective instincts of your founding fathers. Yes, someone who cheated and got away with it intends to continue cheating. And therefore, he does not try to broaden his base. He tries to intensify the support of his voters because that's what fascists do. They don't have legitimate elections. They just have very enthusiastic supporters who might be a minority, but who are encouraged to bear weapons and intimidate other people, and who then can be used to broadcast an optics of legitimacy, because look how keen these people are. There is a large gender gap, but now there's starting to be an age gap. That gender gap has been different for a long time. It was 2019 that it began to be very evident that white female non-college supporters were falling in terms of their support for Trump. All right, I'm just briefly going to look at this a bit more because I think my laptop might run out of battery. Okay, so a Pew Research Center survey suggests that voters in this group under 40 are breaking ranks. So that's white, non-college educated Trump supporters under 40. They are less likely to say that they plan to vote for the president this November than are their parents and grandparents. They question his competence to handle the major issues facing the country, and they have formed a negative assessment of his character. So it's becoming more difficult to sustain the brainwashing of younger brainwashed Trump supporters. They're still brainwashed, but the brainwashing isn't holding as well with younger white non-college educated supporters. The erosion in the Trump white working class base is a major blow to the president's re-election chances. Let's have a look. Here we go. Intentions of white working class voters by age. Voting for, leaning towards Trump, 55% amongst 18 to 39-year-olds, 66% amongst the 40 to 64-year-old group, and 62% amongst the 65 plus. So the 40 to 64 group is the highest because the 65 plus are getting a little uneasy about the merriness of Trump in dismissing a pandemic that predominantly affects their age group in a deadly way, or rather disproportionately affects their age group. So the percentage of white working class voters who are voting for or leaning towards Biden, 40% for the younger group, 32% for the median group, and 65%, 35% for 65 plus. So you might have heard about that pattern before, that older white voters are starting to go, Trump, I'm beginning to entertain a suspicion that Trump might be trying to kill us, or rather doesn't care if we live or die, and that he's just self-serving and wants to claim to be reopening the economy in order to benefit the economy, when really the economy will be harmed because he's not taking care of us as a nation, because he doesn't have a national plan, because he's undermining testing rather than facilitating testing. He is undermining tracing rather than facilitating tracing. He's undermining state supplies of personal protective equipment for health professionals and for the community rather than facilitating the production. He is still disgracefully refusing to enact the Defense Production Act in order to use the resources of America to ramp up production and help Americans and prevent the transmission of a disease that kills a lot of Americans, has killed, and will escalatingly continue to kill more. So the younger voters who are going to vote for Biden, it's not because they like him, they are increasing in their rejection of Trump. Whereas 65s are liking Biden. Voters over 65 are more likely to think well of him. Has Trump been a good president? 44% of the under 40s think he's been good, and 46 think he's been poor or terrible. So he's underwater, 2% underwater with the under 40s group of white working class voters. And that relationship is inverted for the 40 to 64-year-olds, who 59% of them think Trump's been great. Everything that's happening is great. It shows you how Germans supported Hitler. I mean, look at the level of delusion that's required to have 59% of this particular demographic group still think Trump has been good. I think it's great to drill into the specifics of this. When people go, why does Trump still have 39% support? Yes, it's fallen. That's really the key factor, but people will see that number and go, but how? How even 39%? White working class voters who resent the meritocracy, who have been brainwashed to believe that big government is a government that takes from you in terms of taxes and gives to Black Americans. And they legitimately think that's what happens. They legitimately delude themselves into thinking that they personally or their demographic group of other white people don't receive benefits. They think, oh yeah, my vet benefits, my Affordable Care Act, that's not benefits, that's not government benefits, it's just things that I get. Whereas if Black people get them, government benefits, nope, we need a smaller government. That's the swamp there helping Black people. Michael Harriot's done a great expose of how people who reject the idea of big government are typically racist, that big government has often dragged the states kicking and screaming into ending segregation, into Brown versus education in 1952. That's the big government section of the Supreme Court. Okay. Let's look at white working class voter confidence that the president can address issues. Still pretty high. Even the coronavirus outbreak, 59% of 65. I would love to see trends with this. I would love to see some data over time. But I guess I don't look to this researcher with the Brookings Institute for trend lines. If I want to see trend lines, I head over to navigatorresearch.org because they map changes in time. They ask the same questions in surveys of people, and we can see that as more people encounter someone who's infected, when they personally know someone infected with the coronavirus, reality has then become sufficiently insistent to change some Trump supporters' minds, the people who are less welded on to Trump. Young people think Trump can handle race relations, white working class young people under 40. only 35% of them think Trump can handle race relations effectively. Yep. Okay, so that's all from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Rural non-college voters from white urban non-college voters. And what do you think accounts for that difference? The social context of higher races amongst rural voters who are less likely to know someone who is a migrant, and all they have is potentially, or they're more likely to have inherited racism from the finances of the South and the professed position that the South took in the Civil War of everybody, let's go all in with seceding from the United States and attacking the United States in order to preserve our prosperity, which we derive from slavery. That is probably a significant reason in rural voters being more likely statistically to support Trump. And I don't have those statistics at my fingertip, but next time. Thank you. I'll try and add you. And yes, take care, everybody. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed the exercise and the analysis. Cheerio, everybody. Thanks, Tinkerballs. Thanks, Pompeius Magnus. Cheers, bye.